Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving into a really fascinating shift that's literally happening right outside our windows. We're talking about electric vehicles, but actually, scratch that. We aren't talking about exhaust emissions today. We are exploring how EVs are fundamentally redesigning the fabric of our cities through a massive yet completely invisible acoustic paradigm shift. Hopefully, you'll walk away today learning something entirely new about what electric cars can actually do for us. So, picture your city for just a sec. Imagine a neighborhood where your conversations aren't constantly drowned out by the roar of traffic. We usually think of pollution as stuff we can see or smell, right? But what about the invisible pollution in your city? Urban transport noise is a severe and honestly mostly ignored public health crisis. And today, we're going to see how electric cars are offering this really surprising solution to help us reclaim our streets. Just to put this crisis into perspective, think about the number 12,000. According to the European Environment Agency, excessive urban transport noise contributes to 12,000 premature deaths every single year across Europe. So we aren't just talking about a minor annoyance here. The acoustic stress we put our bodies through is quite literally a matter of life and death. All right, here's our roadmap for today. We'll start by covering the invisible urban threat, then check out the acoustic differential, move on to simulating the silence, see real cities, real impact, and finally wrap up with redesigning the urban fabric. Let's jump right in. Starting us off with Section 1, the invisible urban threat. So, long before we even consciously notice it, the constant background hum of city traffic kicks off a whole cascade of health issues. Our restorative sleep is severely disrupted. The World Health Organization actually recommends keeping noise under 40 decibels for restful sleep, which is a threshold that traditional combustion vehicles just absolutely shatter. And this chronic exposure, it leads to heightened stress, anxiety, and even long-term cardiovascular damage like hypertension. In kids, it impairs cognitive performance and learning. It even messes with nature, causing a 38% reduction in urban bird abundance. The acoustic load we're carrying in our cities is just incredibly heavy.
Moving on to Section 2, the acoustic differential.
Now, what's really fascinating here is the sheer contrast when you break down the science of sound. When a traditional internal combustion engine is just idling, it pumps out around 60 to 70 decibels. But an EV at idle, it sits under 50 decibels. That is a massive 20 decibel drop achieved simply by ripping out the mechanical combustion process. It completely eliminates that low-frequency hum you feel when traffic is stopped at a light or jammed up. Now, you might be thinking, wait, isn't a totally silent car kind of dangerous for pedestrians? And you'd be right. That's exactly where EVs comes into play. Acoustic vehicle alerting systems. These are mandated for EVs at speeds under 20 kilometers per hour, and they operate at a compliant 56 decibels. So you get that absolutely crucial pedestrian safety, but it does it by replacing the random, chaotic mechanical clatter of a gas engine with a predictable, controlled sound. It's basically safety without all the acoustic clutter. All right, Section 3, simulating the silence. So we know how individual cars sound, right? But what happens when you scale that up? Researchers ran these really cool microscopic traffic simulations in Tartu, Estonia, and the big picture effect is just brilliant. When they dropped 100% electric car fleet into the simulation, the entire distribution of the population's noise exposure shifted uniformly to the left, straight toward lower, way safer decibels. The average noise drops by about 5 decibels across the entire board. And while an average drop of 5 decibels is awesome, the most profound impact is actually in the extremes. The simulation revealed a whopping 75% reduction in jarring peak noise events. Those very loud spikes that exceed the baseline by 15 decibels? Cutting out those sudden, aggressive roars is what drastically improves our psychology and helps lower our stress hormones. Which brings us to Section 4, real cities, real impact. Let's take this out of the simulation and into the everyday lives of real people. Gothenburg, Sweden actually introduced all-electric buses on Route 60, which is this densely populated residential line, and the human experience totally transformed. After they made the switch, the percentage of residents who simply notice noise from the buses plummeted from 75% down to 39%. But the crazy part is the health metrics. Residents feeling tired dropped from 49 to 39%, and folks feeling depressed went from 22% down to 17%. The mental and physical health of the community measurably improved just by swapping out the buses. And finally, Section 5, redesigning the urban fabric. This is where it gets super exciting. The absence of that mechanical roar acts as a catalyst for a totally new architectural reality. Because heavy-duty EVs like buses and trucks have zero emissions and basically zero vibrations, urban planners can literally reclaim space. We don't need those massive acoustic buffer zones separating highways from our homes anymore. We can reconnect fragmented cityscapes and green spaces that used to be way too loud to enjoy. Planners can authorize vertical densification, building homes closer to transit lines without ruining everyone's health. We can even integrate transit hubs directly indoors, right inside residential or commercial buildings. I love this quote from one of the strategic reports we looked at. It says, "The silence is health and economy." It really hits the nail on the head. That roar of combustion engines we've grown so used to over the last 100 years, it's essentially just the sound of inefficiency and hidden health costs. Acoustic urbanism isn't just about making things pleasantly quiet. It's about human vitality, making the best use of our land and really reclaiming the streets for the people who actually live there. So, what does this all mean for us? Will the legacy of your city in 2050 be the sound of silence? Next time you're walking down your street, take just a second to really listen to the background hum of your neighborhood and imagine what life could be like when that hum finally fades away. Thank you all so much for tuning into this explainer. I really hope you learned something entirely new about the hidden power of electric cars and what they mean for the future of our cities. Until next time, stay curious.